I'm Craig Kenneth, a relationship coach and a psychotherapist. Every relationship is different and every breakup is different. Work with me and you'll get professional help on your situation. And if you're in no contact, focused on personal growth, my creative healing course is filled with hours of exclusive content. Available now at AskCraig.net. Hi there, I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
I'm Coach Margaret.
And today we're going to be looking at 10 common cognitive distortions. Margaret,
Yes.
what is a cognitive distortion?
Well, I'm going to tell you. Cognitive behavioral therapy works very hard to help us with our cognitive distortions.
But what is a cognitive distortion?
It's a way of looking at the world that simply is distorted.
It's not real?
For example, it's not real. When we think about black and white thinking,
Okay.
People are either all good or all bad. Okay? That's not true. There are gradations in there. There are some people who are some good and some bad, and most of us are kind of a mix. Okay? So it's kind of a fixed belief that things are true that may not be. And it's very easy to get in the habit of thinking about some things in a very wrong kind of way.
Okay.
And it's helpful to have this pointed out to us.
Some helpful feedback. You
Yep.
may have some of these, and it's important to take a good look.
And oftentimes now when you reach out to get a therapist, they will practice what they call cognitive behavioral therapy. And it's wonderful for some things. I don't think it's right for everything, but I don't think any one therapy is right for everything either. So I'm just going to tell you, and we can all relate to them. All right?
All right. What do we got?
A cognitive distortion is polarized thinking, black and white thinking, all or nothing. Either you're destined for success or doomed to failure, and you don't realize that there's something in between. Okay? If something doesn't go well, it's the end of the world, and you will never see success. Okay? The people in your life are either angelic or evil. This kind of distortion is unrealistic and often unhelpful because most of the time reality exists somewhere between the two extremes, usually gray, not black and white. Okay? And you'll hear people go to either or all the time. As human beings, we love either or. Okay? When oftentimes it's really all of the above. Think about all those tests you took. Is it either A or B? No, it's A, B, and C. Overgeneralization. When people overgeneralize, they reach a conclusion about one event and then incorrectly apply that conclusion across the board. For example, you make a low score on a math test and conclude that you're hopeless at math in general. You have a negative experience in one relationship and develop a belief that you just aren't good at relationships at all. Okay?
Yep.
If one therapist isn't helpful, then none of them will be. I want to emphasize that one. Okay?
If one breakup coach is bad.
Yes, there's always another good one out there somewhere. At
AskCraig.net.
In other words, you can't generalize from one experience. Okay? Catastrophizing. Now, isn't that a first-rate word? Catastrophizing. This distorted type of thinking leads people to dread or assume the worst when faced with the unknown. When people catastrophize, ordinary worries can quickly escalate. Here's an example. An expected check doesn't arrive in the mail. A person who catastrophizes may begin to fear it will never arrive, and that as a consequence, it won't be possible to pay the rent, and the whole family will be evicted. So you go from one problem to adding a whole series of things that are going to happen and end up with a terrible scenario. My check didn't come, so the whole family's going to be evicted, and we'll be homeless, and we'll be wandering around New York City or wherever, all right? So the fact that it didn't happen yet doesn't mean it isn't going to happen at all. So catastrophizing, you hear lots of people catastrophize. And if this happens, then surely this and that will happen.
Yep.
Okay?
Big one.
Big one, absolutely. Personalization. One of the most common errors in thinking is taking things personally when they're not connected to or caused by you at all. Okay? You may be engaging in personalization when you blame yourself for circumstances that aren't your fault or are beyond your control. Are we human beings good at that? Oh God, we're wonderful at it. Okay? It must be my fault. Incorrectly assuming that you have been intentionally excluded or targeted. Oftentimes those are incorrect thoughts. You haven't been intentionally excluded or targeted and no one even thought of it. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Personalization is commonly associated with heightened anxiety and depression. If you take everything personally, it's going to be rough for you out there, right?
Yeah.
Okay? It's raining today because I wanted to cook outside. It's all about me. Mind reading. We're very good at that. When people assume that they know what others are thinking, they're resorting to mind reading. And I'm just thinking of, we talked about anxious Amy earlier today, but she was sure when she hadn't heard from her boyfriend for a few hours that he was going to run off with his assistant. So from a distance, she was able to read his mind, she thought, and predict what he was going to do. Okay? And sometimes we think that people think things that they don't think at all. All right? And mind reading is, of course, associated with anxiety. Mental filtering.
Mental filtering.
Mental filtering. Another distorted thought pattern is the tendency to ignore positives and focus exclusively on the negatives. Okay? Interpreting circumstances using a negative mental filter is not only inaccurate, it can worsen anxiety and depressive symptoms. Research says having a negative perspective of yourself and your future can cause feelings of hopelessness. These thoughts may become extreme enough to trigger suicidal ideation.
Wow.
In other words, I can only see everything that's wrong in the world. I can't see everything that's right. Now, of course, if you've had an easy life where things have gone right, some of the time you're not going to fall into this. All right?
Yep.
I don't know if anybody remembers Debbie Downer on Saturday Night Live. Rachel Dratch, I believe it is. She could look at the negatives like nobody else and like show her in the middle of a happy dinner party and she would manage to ruin it by saying, oh, but, and look at all the negative things. Okay.
Okay. Moving right along.
Yes.
Hopefully these are helpful to you.
I hope so too. Discounting the positive side. Like mental filters, discounting the positive involves a negative bias thinking. People who tend to discount the positive don't ignore or overlook something positive. Instead, they explain it away as a fluke or sheer luck. And you do hear that now and again. All right? Instead of acknowledging that a good outcome is the result of skill, smart choices, or determination, they assume that it must be an accident or some type of anomaly. All right? I did really well on this test. Well, I was just lucky that they happened to ask the questions that I knew the answers to. In other words, you don't take any credit for the work that you put in.
Yeah.
When people believe they have no control over their circumstances, it can reduce motivation and cultivate a sense of learned helplessness. In other words, if you feel like you can't control the outcome of anything and it's just the luck of the draw, why would you be motivated to do anything? Okay? And you hear people say, well, it won't make any difference what I do. It's still going to be blah, blah, and blah. You know? Okay. Should statements. Now, I have been yelling about should statements forever.
We've covered this in videos before.
I think we have.
I think the video was called "You Should Watch This Video."
Yes, you really should. Shoulds are bad news because there's always guilt associated with a should. When people find themselves thinking in terms of what should or what ought to be said or done, it's possible that a kind of distortion is at work. It's rarely helpful to chastise yourself with what you should be able to do in a given situation. Should or ought statements are often used by the thinker to take on a negative view of their life. Well, I really should do this or that. Well, I really don't want to, or I would have already. These types of thoughts are often rooted in internalized family of origin or cultural expectations, which might not be appropriate for an individual. Such thoughts can diminish your self-esteem and raise anxiety levels. Well, I really should go back to school. I really should, treat my partner better. I should. And there's an old saying in therapy, which is you're shoulding all over yourself. All right? But there's always a should. And parents are wonderful at shoulds. You really should, go visit your grandmother. And you really should do this, that, or the other thing. Fortune telling. A single woman predicts that she will never find love or have a committed and happy relationship based only on the fact that she has not found it yet.
I talked to somebody recently who said that same thing to me.
Yep, literally said it, yeah.
Yep.
Well, it hasn't happened yet. Yeah. She sees her prediction as fact rather than one of several possible outcomes. And that's the intellectual distortion.
Yep.
Your life could turn out in any number of different ways. How do you know, that this is going to happen? Emotional reasoning, we all do this one, refers to the acceptance of one's emotions as fact. It can be described as I feel it, therefore it must be true. I have had that said to me any number of times. I can just feel it that he's seeing somebody else. I can just feel it that she's, doing this, that, or the other thing. Just because we feel something doesn't mean it's true. And this is very important in relationships. For example, we may become jealous and think our partner has feelings for someone else, but that doesn't make it true. It could be true, it could not be true.
Yeah.
But just because you feel it doesn't make it true. Of course, we know it isn't reasonable to take our feelings as fact, but it is a common distortion nonetheless. It's very common. Okay.
So just be aware of it.
Yeah. And ask yourself: Am I making logical sense even to myself here?
How are we doing? A
All
couple
right.
more.
Just a couple more. Emotional reasoning
Okay.
is the false belief that your emotions are the truth. It's very similar to the one before.
Yeah.
The way you feel about a situation is a reliable indicator of reality. Well, sometimes yes and sometimes no. All right? While it's important to listen to, validate, and express emotion, it is equally important to judge reality based on rational evidence. It is very common. And I think really to evaluate anything, you need both your brain and your heart. Okay?
Last one.
Labeling.
Labeling.
Is a cognitive distortion in which people reduce themselves or other people to a single, usually negative characteristic or description like drunk or failure.
Or breathtaking.
As in your case. When people label, they define themselves and others based on a single event or behavior. Labeling can cause people to berate themselves. It can also cause the thinker to misunderstand or underestimate others. Well, you know about Mr. So-and-so. He robbed the drugstore once. He may have had a whole other life and who knows what else since. But we remember people by just one word. Okay? So those are some of the common distortions. I have a separate list that has some different ones on it that I will share with you at another time. But they're worth thinking about. They're really helpful.
Yeah.
Okay? Polarized thinking, I think, is probably the most common one. Either or, black or white. Okay?
Well, hopefully you enjoyed this one. Give Margaret a thumbs up for her research. Leave comments and let us know if you like this one and you'd like to see us talk about stuff like this in the future. Of course, when you want to get our help personally, just go to my website, askcraig.net. Sign up for the coaching option that works best for you. I do email coaching and I do Skype. Margaret is available for Skype coaching.
If you feel that I can be helpful, please sign up.
Just click on Margaret on the top of the website to do that. That's it for this video. I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
I'm Coach Margaret.
and we will talk with you soon. To get my help personally, go to AskCraig.net and click on Schedule Coaching and choose the option that works best for you. I do email coaching or Skype. To schedule a coaching with Margaret, click on Margaret on the top of the page and order a Skype with her. For the Knowledge Creative Healing course, click on the link at the top of the page and click Get Started Now.